But let's do a Stony Progressive takedown. I got an email for a candidate, and of course, I take that and it is kind of I'm the dork. I jump all over it. The email was about a Republican who is currently running, who was actually down at January 6th, and this progressive candidate was attacking the Republican who is the front runner for the Republicans. She was asking for money, and I guess it's the best way to ask for money is to incite you about the opposite team. I'm going to call them teams because it's the same corporate owned. I mean, their similarities are 95%, but they try to split us on a couple issues while they join forces and talk about, they screw us on bills all the time, but they only talk about the ones they're split on, and they fight over for months on end when they sign things through constantly. So this is this is one of those situations where I saw the email, so I thought I had to look up that Republican, and really the Republican is running for the first time, and she's not even there. So when we look at a area, I want to look at the incumbent. That's what you got to take down, right? So the current congressional district of North Carolina's 2nd. This is the capital, the Raleigh area. She is Deborah Ross. Deborah Ross is the North Carolina representative, Democratic Party. And she is currently on a couple of committees, rules, judiciary. She is a lawyer, so I guess she has a little bit of energy towards that. But the space, science, and technology, I have no clue how she got on that committee. I'm not going to dig for that, but so she's a lawyer, and she's on the Rules and Judiciary Committee, so that makes sense. Don't have to attack her on that. That's good. We are looking at quite a primary this cycle, so I think some other people have looked at her and saw her as viable. It's always easy to spot a corporate Democrat by being a Democrat, basically. So yeah, so anytime you have a Democrat on a seat, if you want to primary them from a progressive stance, they're usually vulnerable. People don't last in the party very long as true progressives. You got to pretty much primary them all. And I'm with this show, I'm hoping for a 50% takeover. Let's get rid of all of them. Erica Smith is the candidate, I believe that was in the email that I received asking for fundraiser. Again, she was attacking the far right candidate for Republican who was down at January 6th and is a Trump supporter. But first we need to take down Deborah Ross. You have to get through the primary, but I understand fundraising on the enemy. It makes sense. Can't fundraise on the person that's in there. She got 63% of the election. So she obviously got in well. That usually means, especially in a gerrymandered state like North Carolina, that only typically means that they gerrymandered that region. She knew it was going to be mostly Democrats, so that's why she ran there. She might not live in the district. Almost for 75% of the time, they don't actually have an address in the district. Like I said before, Alma Adams spends less than 2 months of actual time in Charlotte. I think she has a P.O. box somewhere downtown for her congressional address or whatever. That's all you need. Just need a P.O. box in the town. Live in the state for 5 years. P.O. box in the town, and you can get in. Swoop in and take it. Her last primary, she did take a good percentage. Deborah Ross, I just kind of want to run right into the money. I always want to check out the money of this. Ballotpedia is not my favorite thing on the planet, but she definitely has owned her primaries. She spends a good amount of money. That's a pretty, she's been in this for quite a while, guys. Her history goes back to 2008. For House of Representatives. And then we jump to 2020. So let's always look at the money. Her contributors, 410,000 this cycle. We don't want just this cycle though. Let's look at it as a whole. Her contributors in her career. Emily's List. Well, that is a nonprofit profiteer right there. Emily's List makes a lot of money on their advertising subscribing. So that is not a pure Duke and North Carolina. University of North Carolina and Duke are massive contributors to her. They are not exactly small-time nonprofit state organizations. Duke make massive amounts of money from their hospitals and many other things. University of North Carolina is a little less suspect, but that the state of North Carolina gave her $50,000. How does that even work? Alphabet Inc. That is non-compact. These are red flags. These are not Voices for Progress is kind of irony, I would think. Wells Fargo, Wake Forest. So every university, Harvard University, a lot of university money. That money usually comes from the top tier of those places, and are lumped together and brought in. That's not students or working class people from those high-end universities. That's giving her money. We're not going to talk about PAC money, are we? Okay. So she's going to pretend like she doesn't have PACs, even though those were absolutely, very much so, a handful of PACs. 2016, she raised a lot of money, $14 million. That's going to ride her through on a lot of elections. She had over, so what did she got walking into this? Last election cycle, she raised $2 million, spent $1.7 million. So she had $500,000 on hand to go into this next election. And like the previous page showed, she had 410,000. So she's got $1 million right now, and $1 million is going to pretty much set you in a non-major congressional race. The big ones go $2 to $4 million, but $1 million, she's going to run well, and she's going. I mean, she's still got the hard push going through. So I don't think anybody's going to probably take this away from her. But the more you know, maybe we'll wake some people up. The law firms, always a big thing. University and Emily's List. Emily's List is not a small nothing. They have a lot of members, a lot of influence. So she had a recent little stint on.
Madam Chair, I ask unanimous consent to submit to the record this statement from Congressman Bill Pascrell.
The gentlewoman's request will be covered by general leave.
And Civil Liberties, Ms. Deborah K. Ross.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today as a proud co-sponsor of the Protect Our Democracy Act, which ensures that our government remains of, by, and for the people. I also rise in support of my amendment, which would establish a task force within the Department of Justice to investigate and prosecute, in collaboration with state and local governments, threats to election officials. Poll workers in my home state of North Carolina and their families have been subjected to harassment, violent threats, and intimidation, all exacerbated by baseless conspiracies like Stop the Steal.
I bet that's kind of standard in North Carolina, rural areas. That I lived there for 5 years. This last time I was up there, I have to tell the story right now just because, like, I might have to tell it every North Carolina person now. I think we were out in the Brevard area, which is absolutely gorgeous hiking and mountain biking, picturesque as can be. And two different times we had instances where we saw. The second time was really interesting. We were going out to this beaten path, like really 20-mile-an-hour curvy road, like 15, 20 miles of this really slow road to get out to there's a couple trails out there. One was packed full. The next two or three were empty, which we went to. And then, but while we were going out there, we saw a dozen cop cars coming back at us. Not every car, but every two or three cars. And we started counting because there was only maybe 40 cars we saw the whole 15 miles. And in this one section, we saw a dozen out of, literally the whole 40 cars. And then we got to this house on the left. It was a bigger house, and there was another 5 or 6 cars parked there, and then cops coming out in plain clothes, walking into their cars when we passed it, and we were like, holy, what just happened? And that was some kind of meeting. And we saw another time where we saw a lot of cop cars or a lot of undercover cars, and then people in street clothes at a building with very dark building that didn't look like people were there, but it looked like a lot of cars were there. And this is the same area that cops have been absolutely proven to be Klan members, and they've had these meetings. So this is the kind of area that she's talking about.
We suffered critical shortages of poll workers during the 2020 elections, and over 1/4 of counties in North Carolina had understaffed polling sites. Threats to election officials are threats to our democracy and must be stopped. I urge my colleagues to support poll workers, the democratic process, my amendment, and the bill. And I yield back.
Gentlewoman.
See that bright?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was pretty standard, what I would expect from her. She is a Democrat. So, I mean, if you're okay with just Nancy Pelosi style democracy, that's fine. I quickly reviewed the email that I got, and I don't want to give away too much of my email. I can just check this out real quick here. But Sandy Smith, North Carolina, and the things that she's for sounds good. She sounds way more progressive than her counterpart that I just showed. So I'm all for her. I hope she does well. I'm not going to dig deep into her right now. If the election comes close and she's looking within striking distance, I will promote, push, and hope for the best. But corporate Democrats need to take a hit and to actual progressives, and maybe possibly we can get somebody better on this seat. I know this is important to a person that at least sent me this, and she is not so amazing on the cannabis issue. She's not for ending cannabis prohibition at a federal level or expunging past cannabis convictions. She's not into reinvesting in communities most impacted on the war on drugs from the cannabis tax money. She has not put an investment on that bill statewide. And then nationwide, allow state to legalize adult use of cannabis. Highly against it. She's okay for her state to go medical. That's her big, I'm okay for North Carolina to be medical. But not allowing VA doctors to recommend cannabis. She's against the VA doctors bill, and that is probably a big no for those of you in that loop. So anybody in Congress should be okay with vets taking cannabis to help themselves or to enable some sort of stable life if they need it. And it helps for so many things that it should absolutely be on their must needs. If they need it, take it. Gonna finish off with a little Jen Psaki.